Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Board of Commissioners Budget Workshop Meeting number 4. Today is Wednesday, June the 25th, 2025, and it is 4 p.m. City Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Brooks,
Here.
Vice Mayor Kerr,
Here.
Commissioner Taglerini, Commissioner McGeehan,
Here.
Commissioner Gabayi,
Here.
Commissioner Taglerini is absent.
Next on the agenda is public comment. Public participation is encouraged. If you are addressing the commission, step to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and the organization or group you represent. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes and do not include any topic on the agenda. Public comment on agenda items will be allowed when they come up. If you would like someone at the city to follow up on a comment or question made at the meeting, you may fill out a comment card with the contact information and give it to the city manager. Comment cards are available at the back table in the commission chambers. Completing a comment card is not mandatory. Do we have any public comment? No public comment. We will move on to discussion items, FY 2026 Budget Workshop 4 presentation. I will hand this to our finance.
Okay, perfect. Robin, any opening remarks? Would you like me to
Thanks, Andrew.
take it?
Yeah, Mayor and Commission, just thank you again for your time for these budget workshops. It is our desire today to provide as much information that's included in the packet, certainly allow for your questions, comments, for us and staff to provide the answers. As you are aware, we are continuing with our storm recovery process, and those impacts have incorporate some opportunities and other related components to our budget for fiscal 26. I say that because I don't want to use certain words. We want to stay positive and ensure that we continue to provide the best possible municipal services to all our residents, our businesses, and certainly our visitors. But we do have, due to the storms, as we have explained, and we will provide some additional detail today, a few reductions in some of our revenues. However, you will hear, as we have previously discussed, the emergency type loan that we'll be applying for, that the commission approved for us to apply for, and adjustments that we will be making throughout the year, or for next year's budget rather, and we've already made some for the current year. So we will hear in the agenda, and I'll turn it over to Andrew regarding the current fiscal year, where we are, and then certainly look into fiscal 26. We have already received a reduction in the current year's property tax amounts based on the what is called the catastrophic loss refunds for those property owners who have been displaced from their home. And then subsequently into the next year, we are forecasted for a reduction in ad valorem taxes and also some smaller reductions in dollar amounts, given the fact that our ad valorem property tax revenues are single largest source of revenue in the city. But the impacts of the recovery that continues go beyond our ad valorem or property tax into other taxes and fees that we collect, and we will go over that with you as well, and other details. So please, at any time, if you have any questions, please stop, and we can stop and answer those questions, provide the information. So I'll turn it over to Andrew.
Perfect. Thank you, Robin. So looking at this agenda, we're going to hit 4 items. So we'll go through the 2025 financial overview and the emergency bridge loan status. So before we delve into projections for 2026 and walk through the shell of the 2026 budget, let's just see where we are year to date, what that potential revenue loss looks like, and I can give you some more details on the efforts made thus far on applying for the emergency bridge loan, because all those two really go together. Then we'll go through the 2026 budget. This isn't the complete budget book. Planning on having that available for you all, possibly for the July and certainly for the August workshop. That'll include more narrative information and look like the actual book. This is what you're seeing here is the initial kind of shell containing all the high-level schedules of inflows and outflows by fund and by department, and then individual department detail, and then some capital detail as well as personnel. But then that full budget document will be forthcoming in an upcoming workshop in the following months. So we'll go through that budget summary in detail by department, and then that capital improvement plan, and then some. I know we've already had a workshop on personnel, but just gave another personnel listing for 2026 that we can walk through at the end of this, and that's all I have planned for this workshop. So before we, like as I mentioned, before we delve into 2026, let's just kind of walk through the highlights of 2025 in terms of where we stand year to date on some revenue figures and what that loss from projection and really loss compared to where we stand at this same time last year, fiscal year 2024, what those figures look like. So starting on that first page, which is
The local option taxes and shared revenue.
I believe
analysis.
page six in your book. So this is your sum of your projected loss. So we identified three main areas where we have potential loss. One is in ad valorem taxes, and we have losses that we know of for 2025, and then some that we're projecting out for the remainder of 2025. We'll talk through that on the following page a little more. And then those that we can reasonably project for 2026 because the Property Appraiser's Office provided their preliminary taxable value estimates as of, it's supposed to be June 1st. They sent that on May 30th. Then they'll send updated estimates, and by the end of June, beginning of July, which we don't expect to deviate significantly from what they've provided already. And so we'll walk through that in a bit more detail. And then various other taxes and shared revenues, actually not that concerning. I think there's especially some like franchise fees, utility taxes that took the bulk of the hit. But overall, no major significant changes from prior year. And then charges for services. And so there are certainly some permit revenues, parking revenues, certain recreation fees that we saw some dips, and we'll go through those in greater detail. So the sum of all that, based on what we know today, and then what I was projecting through the end of this year, and then on the tax ad valorem tax revenue loss that I can reasonably project for fiscal year 26, we're looking at potential total loss of $3.148 million. So that's what we're asking in our initial email application for potential emergency bridge loan. Commissioner Kerr, or Vice Mayor Kerr?
Yeah, so this is that 0% 10-year loan that you had talked about.
Yes.
So if I might, the first three rows, these are all go into the general fund. These impact the general fund. And the fourth is for parking. That's the parking fund. Is that correct?
Mostly parking fund,
Generally?
but then some a little recreation, some a little permitting building fund as well.
But it's other than general, it's parking fund. It's set
Correct.
general fund for the others. Okay, just trying to get an idea of operationally how this all sits. Okay.
But then those loan proceeds are available citywide for funding general operations across the city.
The first three,
The entire loan proceeds,
you'll be able to use those in the general funds if we get the loan.
correct.
Okay. That's good to know. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so let's dig in a little more detail on those 2025 ad valorem losses, 26, and essentially those four line items. Let's dig into each one a little bit further. So we've got your 2026 projected ad valorem revenue loss. So how did I drive that? So we have our millage rate of 2.75 mils. That's been consistent over prior years dating back to, I believe, 2019 to 2020 through current. That is our millage rate. And then we had our taxable value estimate that was provided as of May 30th, as I mentioned. The property appraiser does that statutorily required each year, provide those preliminary estimates. And you can see that was slightly lower than the taxable value from last year. So then we multiply that by the 2.75, divide by 1,000, and boom, now you've got your difference there that we will be, that had the hurricanes not struck, and let's say taxable values stayed the same, because of that impact, we're at that $338,000 expected reduction in tax proceeds. So that's where that figure came from. And then this next page just goes a little more into detail. So interesting on this schedule, I highlighted Madeira Beach, and you can see third from the right, not everyone is negative. In fact, many are positive, but you can see more of those barrier islands, your North Reddington Beach, your Reddington Shores, your St. Pete Beach. You see those have some negative impacts, and a lot of that is in that in the 2025 net taxable value new construction, right? So that's where we're hitting. That's where you see that's just a directly impacted by the hurricanes, right? So you purchase a home in 2021 that's got land value and it's got structural value, and that land value from 2021 or 2022 to current has maybe had some minor increase in land value, but then you had structural value, right? And then that structural value maybe was at 600, 700,000 that's now significantly damaged. So from that assessment, that value has dropped. The good news out of this is that as redevelopment takes place, this isn't a permanent impact, right? This is not saying the land values across Pinellas County are infinitely impacted. As you can see, there's other communities across Pinellas that values have gone up. So this is more of a short-term impact that overall we're still trending up, right? And as those homes turn, right, and there's sales to investors, and then you lose homestead, a lot of those factors can come into play that change those taxable values on some of those impacted homes. So this is what we're facing for next year, but by no means I don't think this is a long-term trend that we need to be worried about. But I'm certainly factoring that into my request for emergency bridge loan for the revenue loss purposes. Okay, and then on the next page, this one I'm going to say I've been pleasantly surprised. I thought that this catastrophic event allowance would be more significant. I've given you all warnings, maybe not dire, but of concern that this is available to homeowners, to property owners, and it all just depends on how many applications come through and what those numbers look like, but they're just not as significant as I initially feared. We were at 40, so the big hit was in March, and these are real numbers, so this is what we saw. So it's not like we had to pay the tax collector or we have to pay property owners. All it did is net it just gets netted out of our tax distribution coming to the city. So it was only $45,763 in March, $4,000 in April. I think we might already even have May, and that was low as well. I did put in an estimate for the remainder of 2025 at $200,000. That's probably a little high, but so that total of $250,000 is potentially what we could expect for fiscal year for those DR 465 applications for the property tax refund. And so that's what that piece is. Then the next page on 10 is just a multi-year comparison of October through April for the local option taxes and the shared revenues. And I did October through April for these because they come in 1 month in arrears, and typically the end of the next month. So I wanted to make sure I had the same number of months collection, so I went back a month to make sure we had an even comparison from 23 to 24 to 25. So that's seven months of activity in fiscal year 23, 24, 25 for these taxes that you see: local option, use and fuel, utility, franchise, and CST. Again, CST and your local option, use and fuel, not a major decline. Most would be in those electric utility franchise fees. So especially if you stop paying your electricity bill because you're displaced from your home, then you're not going to pay those franchise fees, as those come from Duke Energy.
Andrew? So if I'm reading this correctly, just to clarify, if you took the total revenues fiscal year 2024 minus the reduction 2025, that should give you your total revenues fiscal year 2025, is that correct? That's not shown? So the fiscal revenue 2025 should be some, on the local option use and fuel tax would be 710 minus 30,000?
So I guess, are we looking at, are you basically questioning where did you get the $30,034.42 reduction?
Well, I'm just trying to understand the chart here. I'm trying to define the reduction of fiscal year 2025. It would be the 710 minus the 30,000.
Yeah, happy to provide that. So what,
am I reading that correct? I mean, that's what the estimated would be for the 2025?
Really that 30,000 is just taking the 710,000 and reducing it by 4.23%. Or what is the 4.23% reduction of that 710,000?
That 30,000 is 4.23%?
Yes.
Okay, I just didn't understand. Okay.
And so my logic behind that is I know what my revenues are October through April of 25, obviously May through September unknown, but I already know I'm at a 4.23% reduction, or like on franchise fees, we're almost a 20% reduction from last year. So let me take last year's total revenues that I know and then reduce that by 20%, and that's my proposed revenue loss. So that's my estimation and my methodology for calculating that estimated revenue loss.
Okay,
for those types of local options.
I just wanted to be able to follow along and not just nod my head.
You've got this.
Okay,
You're good to go. Yes, you nailed it.
Okay.
It's the total from last year times that percentage, and there's the estimated reduction. Yep.
And just to add, as Andrew stated, our utility service taxes, franchise fees that are for electric, water, are obviously subject to consumption. So
Right.
homes that are not occupied, so Vice Mayor, your home is currently not occupied, so it's not, you may be getting a minimal electric bill, but your normal bill would be, I'm just guessing, $100 a month. And so $200 a month times a 10% public service or utility tax times a 6% franchise fee, that's not happening currently for at least about 100 structures that have been demolished,
Right.
plus another few hundred that are empty, that are not generating the 1,000 to 2,000 kilowatts of electric consumption or utilizing 5,000 to 8,000 gallons of water. So just to
Right,
kind of
so-
provide a little bit more, that corresponds into revenue reduction,
Right.
not only to the utility, but certainly to us in the form of the taxes and the fees that Andrew alluded to. The communications is a little bit interesting because for just about every structure, that's mainly based on your cell phone. There are homes that still have a landline, but that has declined over the years. So the communications tax reduction shouldn't be that significant because as long as you still have a cell phone and it still has your Madeira Beach address, then the company, your provider, should still be taxing you, and then correspondingly, that revenue does come to us. So you don't physically have to be in your home to pay that tax or for the city to receive that tax. It's a lot more information than I think you wanted to learn.
Yeah, no,
about
it's great.
Taxing structures.
And cell phone's the bulk, but also does include cable. So that is one thing where your cable could get shut off and
Okay,
you're not paying that CST on that.
appreciate that. Yeah, and again, this is all short-term, 2025, 2026.
Until,
And this is what we're going for the bridge loan. This is where all the numbers come from.
That's right.
Perfect.
Yep. And so then the bigger impacts felt, as you can see, the permit inspection, plan review fees, no need to elaborate on that. You see the almost 75% reduction. We know why with the abatement of those fees. You know, little recreation marina fees are actually not significant, 9% decrease. Parking is where we see 20%. So then you can see where that turns into, okay, let me annualize that to determine my reduction. Let me just take fiscal year '24 and multiply that by those percentages. So that's where we are, we're coming out for the charges for services piece. And then the next pages just kind of give you some graphical depictions of where we stand with ad valorem tax collections, and they have continued to rise because property values have risen from 23 to 24 to 25, and so have collections. And the property tax refunds have been pretty de minimis. And then you can see building and planning, permit inspection, plan review fees, impact fees, and then parking-related revenues, 23, 24, 25, and then the fines for parking, and then some of the non-exchange revenues, and then our fees for services, sanitation, stormwater, largely unaffected, so I did not include that in the analysis. Impressively, those fees and collections for sanitation and stormwater have been pretty solid. A little less than that last year, but not significant. I didn't feel enough for me to include in the rev loss analysis. And then you can just see the for the 3 years by revenue type in the tables what those differences are. So that just kind of shows where we're at revenue-wise in fiscal year 2025, some of those areas of concern, and then ultimately what we are applying for and waiting to hear back on the emergency bridge loan, about $3 million and change. Any questions on that, or should we move on to the 26 budget? Perfect. All right. Okay, so on the 26 budget materials, we have some kind of high-level information. So what's our total revenues by fund, total expenses by fund. I love my budget summary by character at the fund level. We'll walk through that. And then from there, we really get in just to the detail at the department level. And so then when we get into that, I'll just kind of pause and let you all ask any questions you have on a department-by-department basis until we get through all the departments, and then the last pieces will just be the capital improvement plan and some personnel information. So here you have the summary. I'm on page 18 of your packet, your summary of revenues by fund, and the percentage, and then we have our expenditures by fund, and what that looks like, just so you can kind of see the magnitude on a fund-by-fund basis. Obviously, general fund, far and away the largest. On the expenditure side, you see stormwater fund large, because we do have some significant stormwater drainage and roadway improvement projects slated for fiscal year '26. Then getting specifically on page 20, just getting into this is the revenues, other inflows by character. So what are we collecting in charges for services, intergovernmental revenues, taxes, miscellaneous revenues, et cetera. So that just gives you a little snapshot there. And then here's my budget summary by character on page 21. And so the goal here is just to show at a fund level, the total sources equals total uses by fund. And there's a formula error in the grand total at the far right. I apologize for that, but you'll see if you look at each fund that the total sources for the fund equals the total uses. Now, we don't necessarily budget that way to say, okay, every revenue needs to match every expense. So what happens if you have a deficit or a shortfall, then that fund balance, net position carryover used, we populate that to balance the budget for that fund and eliminate the shortfall. Or if we budget to an excess, then we'll have fund balance, net position available, which is that bottom line, which will then be available in reserves for future years. So if you start with Archibald Park Fund and work your way to the right, you'll see, okay, here's what we've budgeted in revenues and other inflows, and then what we've budgeted in expenses and other outflows, and then here's our shortfall, or here's our surplus. So you can see Archibald Park with that shortfall, $768,750, building fund, shortfall, and so on and so forth. And so this just kind of just gives you kind of the high-level overview at the fund level, what we're budgeting, inflows and outflows. And then in any particular fund, we don't have any one deficit that we don't have sufficient reserves to meet. And I know we've had, this is our fourth budget workshop, we've had a previous budget workshop where we've gone over and said, here's our total fund balance / reserves for each fund as of our audited financial statements in 24, 9/30/24. Here's our revenue and expense activity year to date in 25. Here's what we can project our beginning fund balance in 26, or at the end of 25, beginning of 26 is. So the only one really of concern is that stormwater fund of the 10 million, and we do have remaining proceeds, some small remaining proceeds from the Series 2019 debt to spend down, but not much. And then we would have existing reserves at least available to pay for projects in 2026. And then over time, as we look at that multi-year capital improvement plan for stormwater fund, we can start talking about potentially issuing debt, albeit a line of credit or a bank loan for some of the larger projects going out multiple years.
Andrew, I have a question.
Yep.
So back to page 18, if you don't mind. So
Back to page 18.
yeah, just so I understand. So with our current reserves, how do you expect at the end of 2026 with your budget to impact our current reserves once you go through all this? Are our current reserves going to be impacted seriously or not?
Well, the only significant impact really would be on the stormwater fund is where we'd see the most impact, because we've got 10.5 million of capital projects planned.
Okay.
So that's
But
where
But we can work our way through that, but as far as...
yeah, we can work our way through that. In fact, I'll pull up just to show you where
That's where you're talking about, if we wanted to consider loans or whatnot on those capital improvement projects. I understand that. I'm just trying to get just like you balance your books at home, where am I going to be at the end of the day? Is this storm, Hurricane Helene, yeah, it's a short-term hit, at the end of 2026, after you're finished, you know our given, you know what payroll is going to be, you know what all these expenses are going to be, which is $45 million. Is that correct? Total expenses?
Yes.
Okay. If we know that we're going to have those expenses, and our revenue is short, are you saying that our balance is going to drop by 18 million?
If we spend 10.5 million in capital projects in '26.
And we don't have that. We have maybe 20 in the whole
So as of
reserves.
fiscal year, as the end of 2024, we have almost $30 million just sitting
In our
in
reserve.
cash.
Okay.
In cash, pure cash,
Okay.
right? So from a liquidity standpoint, I don't have concerns. We can afford to incur 10 million. Now, if we're going to incur 10 million every year for the next 5 years, I've got concerns, and we need to start talking about a financing plan over time.
Right.
But at least in this current budget, this upcoming fiscal year, we're well reserved to cover 10 million in these stormwater improvement projects, right? In the general fund alone, as of 9/30/24, we had 17 million in fund balance in the general fund. So we are, as I mentioned, we are well reserved,
Right.
but
Okay.
conservatively, yes, that is a big number, and we've presented this to you all in years past. And that, this is probably
Well, this really goes into the debate on whether we get loans or not.
right.
How much are we comfortable having in reserves needed for such occasions as we had this past year?
Right.
And do we have a feel for that, or is that something that,
Well, if you're speaking to the calamity of the hurricanes, we had advanced proceeds to the tune of, I think, 6.5 million. So that was a significant cash event for the city to then help pay for those debris removal related expenses, what we call those Cat A expenses. So not a significant cash hit to the city. As far as just pure revenue and expense, we're hoping, if not all, nearly all of the hurricane-related expenses will be reimbursed by insurance or by FEMA. So on a net basis, not a significant monetary loss to the city. But then, as we know, that reimbursement cycle can be long and arduous. And then if we have this bridge loan, there's another $3 million of cash that we have to sustain operations. So again, I'm not concerned about our cash position, but if we're going to aggressively pursue a major stormwater drainage improvement and roadway resurfacing plan that looks like it's 20, 30, 40 million, over a period of 3, 4, 5 years, then at some point where I start to raise my hand is like, okay, I feel like our cash position's reducing some. Let's start talking about financing options. Then I come to you all at that point.
right, and we're starting now, working on the grant process
Right.
for resiliency, and so we have a lot of things out there that could help in this. But
Right.
just, I bring this in so I understand, but also other people might want me to ask these questions as well, because it brings out exactly where we are. So,
And we can certainly we can bring you back really to graphically show you what the reserves would look like based on the information at the
Yeah, I
end of
mean,
fiscal '26. I think that's important to show that particularly now. And to add to what Andrew stated, as of September 30th of '24, our general, just in the general fund reserves,
Yeah,
the 17.4, we had 4.7 that were committed, meaning they were already directed at a specific project or activity, and another 2.8 million
Right.
assigned, which are part of the expenses for going forward into the current year and into '26.
Right. And we're in a great cash position right now. So, I mean, we need to get the capital improvements completed, but.
Yeah, mostly
it's
road
just part of that
projects.
discussion, yeah. So hopefully we can still
Yes.
solicit some grants.
And one thing for the future, and since we do fund our road projects in our stormwater fund, and so the current revenue or inflows into the stormwater fund do not cover the entire cost of our capital road resurfacing improvement project. We will look and bring back to you a analysis of the stormwater fee. We're not proposing anything for fiscal '26, but something to keep in mind for fiscal '27 and beyond for that fee. It is currently $10 a month for each equivalent residential unit. So relative to the county, I think we're kind of in the middle for the stormwater fees. We're not at the top, we're not at the bottom either, but again, that's how we funded them. But certainly looking at, obviously, other funding sources, extremely important, and we'll continue to do that.
Perfect. Thank you.
So if no other questions on that high-level overview, page 22 just shows a summary of your general fund expenditures. And then from there, then we show general fund expenditures by department on page 23. Again, some more high level. And then the following pages is what gets into the detail for each department. So I think that at this time, what we'll do is just introduce the department. Here's Board of Commissioners, and then see if there's any questions that you all have on any aspects of the operational budget at the department level. So if there's any questions on Board of Commissioners.
So I'd like to just talk about something that'll carry through for the whole, all of the budget.
Sure.
When I went through the budget, one of the things that I had a ton of questions on was the fiscal year 2025 projected, that the numbers didn't seem to match the budget. And I'm bringing this up because I met with Andrew today and we talked about that, and I was looking to understand how those numbers get projected. If you have like for instance, on the Board of Commissioners, the group insurance is, actually, that's not a good one. Salaries and commission is budgeted at $40,500, and it's projected to be at $33,807. Workers' comp is budgeted at $500, it's projected at $0. And when you go throughout the entire budget book, there are examples like that. And what Andrew had shared with me is that is, you want me to tell it or you want to tell it? Because and my point is, he'll explain what it is, because I'm sure he can explain it better than me, but I would really like to see it when we have our next budget meeting, that what he's going to explain that we get, because it will allow us to sit here and look at real numbers that would be input by the department heads.
Yep. Thanks for teeing that up. So the FY25 projected is basically our projected actual through the end of this fiscal year, ending September 30, 2025. So what the system does, and this budgeting module in the system we're in, has the current year-to-date actual, and that actual figure is listed, and then there's what's called the annualized projection, and the system automatically has that on what's called calculated, and it's simply taking what's the number of days elapsed from October 1st, 2024 through today, and then, okay, how many days are left in this fiscal year, and let's annualize that figure we currently have. That works well for some budgeted line items. For others, it doesn't. Ad valorem taxes would be a perfect example, right? We get a big bulk of our tax collections in, November, December timeframe, and then it tapers off. So to try to annualize that would be futile, would be inaccurate. And then the same thing here, Board of Commissioners, depending on where we're at on our payroll cycle, it might not come out exactly, and we know more or less we're going to pay, the 40,000, then we should change that FY25 projected to, or calculated actual, because we have a good idea of what it's going to be. So what we can endeavor to accomplish for the next workshop is have the departments go through those annualized projections. If you all feel that that is of value to you as you analyze both what did we budget last year, what are we budgeting next year, and kind of where do we think we're going to end up, actual, at the end of this year, we can take a closer look at those figures. And admittedly, I think what the push that was made for this workshop was to get the 2026 budget balances in and just let the system kind of auto-calculate those projections based on the method I mentioned. Whereas in a lot of, many or some of these, we probably should manually update those figures based on just information that we know is more relevant. So for example, after-school programs and recreation. Probably what the amount is now is what's going to be at the end of the year, because after school is over, right? Except maybe a little tail end in September, we can add some revenue, but annualizing that based on the current balance wouldn't make sense. So those are things we can clean up for you for the next workshop. So if you have questions on that FY25 projected column, perhaps just hold them for next workshop, and we'll get those more refined.
Great, thank you for that. I think it would be worthwhile.
I definitely do. When I was going through and the numbers were so off, I'm like, see all my little, it was like it didn't make sense to me. So Andrew explained it to me today, which I'm glad, because I would have come in and been asking on every other page questions.
Right, we're being asked to ask questions.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think, as Andrew stated, for even in the Board of Commissioners for travel and training, there hasn't been any, I don't think, any expenses related to travel and training. So because there have not been any, it's projected to be zero, but that doesn't mean that there won't be some if one of you decide to travel somewhere in July, August, or September.
Yep.
Yeah, personally, I was wondering how the islands did, like the Bahamas or something.
That we might need to take a field trip?
Might need to,
We've got the budget for it.
just a joke.
Mayor Brooks, any more overall comments, or do you want to kind of dig in department by department?
I'm happy to go department by department.
Okay, perfect. Any questions from any of you on Board of Commissioners? Hearing none, then the next we can go to would be City Clerk. And then any questions on anything for City Clerk?
I'm not seeing anything jump out at me. We had that big software jump.
That's not under city clerk, is it?
Yeah,
Oh, yes. Sorry.
it's that and contractual services. Does that come under the IT?
I think that's specific software like what we use for our agendas. We did add new software, I think, and Claire, you
Yeah,
can,
the
We've
the
got-
fish.
Yeah. the
for Laserfish.
Laserfish.
We have
the-
Just For Ya.
yeah, just,
We've got, what we have, our software is what we all use, but it comes out of my budget.
Right, but that's a one-time bump, kind of.
Yeah. But no, it
Well-
renews every year.
Oh, so
But those are-
that's a subscription then? Okay.
Yeah. Some are labeled software and some's labeled contracts.
How's that different than the contractual services?
Well, we have contractual services like we get the code, the ordinance is codified, and and things like that. We just had the code, just got updated last week of the first 12 ordinances that we did. So all of that is a contracted service.
Okay, but that's all in budgeted
Yeah,
anyway,
the
so
city
I'm
clerk's office.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's a service, so what we have is basically softwares and the contracts for those services is all.
If there should be, I mean, software in several departments that's the, specific to that department, so MGO is specific to community
Right.
development building, the ones that we mentioned to the clerk, the marina has their own software to track the store sales. So
Right, and again, it's a huge number between what's projected and budgeted, because the projected is really more of a amortized, I'm not using the right term, but actual charges just amortized out to the
Yeah,
end
some
of
of
the year.
our, some of
So-
ours don't come in till like July. You know.
Oh,
it's-
okay.
It all depends on when we got the software or,
It's not on a monthly basis?
no, it's paid by annual.
some are
Just FOIA, we get a
annual.
bill once a year. Laserfish, we get a bill once a year. We,
Okay,
we have a program that backs up we have Barracuda, which is the archival program for our emails and all archive. We have to have that, and it's got a lot of security and cybersecurity and all of that takes care of everything, and it tries to stop the spams and all. If something happens, they
Right.
immediately try to
but
fix
again, that's
everything.
annual. They charge you
Yeah.
annual. You get a discount if you go annual, I imagine.
Barracuda was a whole lot less, but the counties and all use it in the cities.
Yeah.
It's a very good program.
Okay,
But you have to have a archival program, and the one good thing about because we have to back up everything. One good thing about Barracuda, and we do a lot of public records requests, we may have to generate thousands of emails sometimes, and we're able to do the PST files, download them to a folder, upload them to Just FOIA, and get them to the customer. We're no longer buying thumb drives or saving them a lot of money. I mean, we used to get quite a bit from public records requests, but it's really decreased. And so it doesn't take us long. We have to go through them all and redact the exempt and confidential information. One good thing about Just FOIA, once we get those emails in there, when we go through each document, it'll label the statutory requirement for that, because we can't just redact something without stating the statutory requirement for it, and it does that. And if there's like 4 Social Security numbers in that one document, when we redact the first one, it'll redact all of that same in that same document. Then at the end of it, that it generates a report for the customer, the requester, exactly why they see all those redactions. And so it's programs that we have to have to satisfy Chapter 119 and other public records statutory requirements.
okay.
We used to do all that by paper. And it was horrible. And if you take a PDF document and you redact, you can actually, if you do it just right, you can see those numbers. So they don't recommend redacting in PDF or taking a magic marker. That information somehow can be seen, but in Just FOIA, when they do a redaction, there's no way you can, and plus, it'll automatically put that statutory requirement on it, so, which is wonderful. But they're much-needed programs, and
I have a question. Are you done? Okay, I have one question. I know we're not focusing on the projected because we're going to fix that next month, but on the overtime, because there was nothing budgeted for overtime, and it shows $3,300 in projected overtime, I'm guessing the overtime is from the hurricane?
it was.
So
Yes.
how will we, or will we be able to understand when looking at projected for the year for different things that were specifically hurricane-related, that we don't think, you don't want to budget for that, right? Because that $3,300, we're going to get reimbursed from FEMA for overtime. Will there be a way for us, not just this overtime, but across the board, there's a lot of actuals that are going to show up in the budget that were hurricane-related that we got reimbursement for. And I mean, in my mind, I'm just thinking to be mindful that,
And we can account for those. There's a way in our payroll system that we can total those, and we have because we're compiling that to report to
report.
FEMA if we haven't already.
so I'm thinking beyond overtime. I'm thinking just
Yeah,
in
other-
general,
yes.
lots of other things for that. How will we end up with a final report on what we spent by line item for, not down to the, but like, we spent this much money in recreation repairing this, and this, or buying this. They had this much overtime, in this department, that department, what have you. You know what I'm
Yes,
saying?
yes.
Almost a budget analysis of the hurricane-related expenses.
And see, that's the only way.
Because they're going to get included in our budget, but they're
Correct.
not really going to be something we'll
Not a
budget for
recurring,
next year.
right.
Is
Right,
it-
it's not a reoccurring.
Yeah, but is it prudent to budget for that if disaster-related
Well, it has to
incidents
show up in here because it's what we actually spent.
Yes.
So you're
Yeah.
going to end up with those dollars.
with the actual?
Yeah, how
with
do
the
you
projected, but-
extrapolate that? Do you know what I'm saying?
Right,
Does that make
well,
sense?
it was a perfect example.
Yeah.
With the overtime, you don't really have to put it in the 2026 budget. If we were to be hit with a disaster and you incurred those expenses, you would expect to be reimbursed.
Correct. But there'll
Correct.
be lots of expenses that will
Yeah.
show up in the
Yeah.
actual that we won't want to
Put into the
carry over
budget.
for next year, right?
No, I
Yeah.
agree.
And with overtime, our department doesn't get overtime at all.
Right.
If
No,
emergencies-
that just was a good example to me
Yes.
for the hurricane-related expenses.
Yeah.
And I can provide reporting on, and we've done some reporting previously on hurricane-related expenses, if you recall, top 10 vendors, what those payments were to those vendors, but we can also break it down by general ledger account. We do have a dedicated disaster-related expenses, that's in the general fund, Department 1400, which is non-departmental, and it's called disaster-related expenses. We're not going to budget anything for disaster-related expenses. If there's a disaster, then we'll do a budget amendment like we did this year. But there are some other accounts and other departments that were disaster-related, so I can provide some summary information. Okay, for this account, here's the total that was spent on Hurricane Milton, Hurricane Helene, so you have that. As far as budgeting for '26, I think the departments know that to say, okay, in this overtime example, I'm not going to budget for overtime because it happened as a result of the hurricane. I don't anticipate overtime in our regular day-to-day operations, just like I don't anticipate repair and maintenance to be as high as it was last year because a lot of those repair and maintenance activities relating to my sanitation department were as a direct result of hurricane mitigation efforts. But I can certainly make that reporting available at that general account level for those hurricane costs.
Thank you.
And I think that would be less too, because, when we did the new personnel manual, exempt employees won't be getting overtime and stuff, so that would go way down. It was between me and Laura, we worked the store and
Right.
put in a lot of hours, and I think she's going to exempt, and so you probably won't see any overtime in there. Gotta take care of that.
Andrew, if I can ask, kind of back up a minute, talking about capital improvements in the roads for a minute. Is there a category that you put in annually for, I'm going to say over a 20-year span, you improve all the roads, you repave, and then you start the cycle all over again? Using that analogy, whatever you would expect to spend, you'd have a category, I'm going to call it 5% of that capital expenditure that goes into a budget so that when you're ready to, you have that set aside to repave your roads, to do your stormwater and your road. Is that already baked in here? I'm just not remembering where it was.
Yeah, I think the way we budget for that is more based on specific identification. You've got a larger municipality with a lot of square footage. They might put in a percentage of like say an equipment replacement fund, right? And they're going to
Right,
put in a
exactly.
percentage of this, it's going to, we're going to fund it every year.
Right.
I think for this city, we have more, when I say specific identification, it's okay, in this fiscal year, I anticipate repaving this section, and here's what it's going to cost, rather than just trying to allocate dollars based on a formula or percentage. So it's more, here's the project, here's the fiscal year, and then part of that multi-year capital improvement plan.
I'm just kind of like planning ahead. I don't remember ever seeing a fund like that we allocate to, or,
Yeah, we don't, because the departments more project that out in their specific departmental capital budgets and say, over the next 5 years, here's the vehicles I need to replace, here's the road that needs to be repaved, and here's that
at
cost.
least that would keep us on target, I would think, whether it's vehicles or whether it's roads or, just my thoughts.
Yeah, it's, again, there's,
Something we can consider, absolutely.
Thank you.
if nothing else on city clerk, anything on city manager?
So I have a question on the Chamber of Commerce donation. We did $10,000 in 2024. We budgeted for $10,000 this year. We have projected almost $14,000, and then we're budgeting $4,000 for 2026.
I think we're going to budget 10,000, just as we
Okay.
have.
So-
We'll change that.
What is the, where did we go over, Robin, in
I think we've
projected?
put-
Or is
we've
that,
put-
oh, you know what, never mind. I'm not going to ask a question about projected.
Yeah,
I'm going to wait. No,
that
I'm
was,
sorry.
that was one
Yeah,
that should
no,
not
no,
be
no, I'm sorry.
annualized.
Yes.
We'll correct for next year, because I think we've discussed with each of you some of the donations, contributions that we make, and so just to note, we'll correct it.
The Founder's Day, do we have a date for that yet?
We were just discussing that last week, tentatively. It's been held the first Saturday in May, but I know Jay just stepped out, but we will get back with you whether it's on the 2nd or the 3rd of May.
Here
We
it
had,
comes.
Jay, the Founder's Day for next year, I believe you had mentioned, I'm recollecting that that's the tentative date for the King of the Beach, or am I confusing the dates? That was they tentatively are requesting April 30th, May 1st, and May 2nd for King of the Beach, which that's our Founder's Day event would be on Saturday, May the 2nd. Nothing precluding that we have it on May the 3rd, other than it's a Sunday, but we will be reviewing that with the King of the Beach personnel.
I have it in my calendar for the 2nd because that's when you told me it would be.
Yes. Right, we
And I
talked
already
about that.
booked a vacation, so if you're going to change it, I'd like to be a
We
part
will
of the
change it.
conversation because I didn't get to go this year.
Okay.
And so I'd really, really like to be there.
Of course. So tentatively, we've scheduled it for May 2nd. But we will confirm.
A public information officer, Robin, if we hired a PIO, would that fall here or would it fall in the, there's another
The
department?
non-departmental?
No, there was a IT, would that fall in the IT department or would that fall under the city manager?
Pretty much, really, it can go, for supervision purposes, probably in the city manager's office.
I would really,
Incurred.
my opinion is I think we really need a public information officer. We just have too much advertising that's not consistent. And I think and that is no rub on any person who's doing it. I just really think if we had a dedicated person, there's so much, there's just so much that person could do one of the presentation at the Big C today, as I was listening to it, and I'll talk about that in our next meeting, I thought and they talked about a public information officer, and I wish that, or it would be my desire if we could, if we have it in the budget, that we find a way to put that person in the budget and hire them.
And to add to that, I think something that's been discussed for a while, but much more sternly post-storms from the county, that to assist, should we have any similar or other types of emergencies, that we do staff an individual at the EOC
Yeah.
and I think this component of a PIO could split that time, or certainly with other staff, but they could definitely help out should that be needed in the future. But we can certainly look at that and add and come up with the budget.
I mean, I'm just one voice. If the commission shares in that, I'd like to.
No, we
Totally
should
agree with
bring
that.
that up.
Yeah, definitely.
Bring that up as a separate topic,
Right.
of course, but would they also be part of marketing?
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be,
And are there funds available from the, what's it, the 6%?
the Visit St. Pete Clearwater, I don't think that can be used for personnel, because our expense would be mainly the salaries to pay for that individual. We can utilize
But it's
the,
marketing.
yeah,
When they give
Yeah.
us money, when they gave the $50,000 for the seafood festival, 25 of it had to be spent on marketing. So, I mean, because when you look, we're going to talk about that later, but when you look at the budget or the expenditures from the seafood festival, they spent over 35,000 on marketing, but they had to spend 25. I know they had to spend that, so, but they don't,
yeah, they don't really,
Don't
they
let
don't
you.
fund personnel
Right.
or, yeah, salary costs for staff.
and they only fund events by specific, I mean, you have
There's
to meet
criteria,
certain
yeah,
criteria
it's
to be
very-
able to get event funding from them. So-
We can we'll look at some options and even some ideas relating to marketing. It is, in the past, some cities have funded these positions through marketing or advertising. And you can market and advertise quite a bit. It's just the question of if, when, how, and why.
I was just seeing kind of a dual role.
Yeah. Well, when we talked about like doing we've talked at several meetings about the website, and a PIO would be the person who would help build a website that works. I showed somebody today, when I went on the website to look for events, from your phone, when you go on from your phone and you're looking for events, you have to scroll all the way to the bottom, and it's not a square, it's a line that says events. And then you click on events, and it takes you to another page. Then you got to choose which events you want to see before. Our website could be so much more enhanced, that would be more user-friendly, and that person would have that mindfulness. That's what they do. I just see the benefit for us is, for the community, it would be great.
We'll bring that back to the next workshop, what that would look like.
Okay, next department. Community development. Any questions on community development?
Quick question on contractual services. We budgeted 36,000 and it doubles in 2026. Is there a reason for that?
For contractual services?
Yes.
Yeah, and community development. I
I
think
can pull
that's-
that up. Community development.
No, for the current year, we had budget, well, I think it was in professional services for the master plan, but yeah, and I can't think off the top what what that was.
So this is University of Florida Board of Trustees, UF and Kimley Horn Impact Fee Study and LDR amendments.
Okay. We did discuss a little bit about those
Okay.
and related to the impact fees, and then also additional work that we may have Kimley Horn do.
Anything else on community development? If not, finance?
Finance jumps really high on the accounting and auditing. Is that because of the auditing piece? Because is that because of the projected is kind of out of whack with what was budgeted?
So we're going to go through an RFP process for the audit, so those audit fees are unknown at this point. We can refine that. I think we budget for a little more, not knowing what might come in, and so that's subject to adjustment once we get the proposals back on the RFP for the auditing services.
So Andrew, for our current auditing fees for this year, was it 36 or 40,000?
It was closer to 50.
50,000, okay.
Well, it's offset by the professional services. I don't know if your categories changed or, but I don't want to micromanage.
For professional services?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
So-
decrease from
there's a decrease, maybe.
147 to 130.
So we've got, that's for my services. And then we have some for our PFM financial advisory for our FA services, financial advisory. That's an ongoing contract with them. And then we have just 15,000 for others needed professional services. So that's that piece there for the 130. And then the accounting and auditing is $75,000 we budgeted at this point. The vendor is TBD, to be determined, RFP process, FY
external audit.
2025 audit fees. And then we have $1,200 for the GFOA Certificate of Achievement annual fee, $4,000 to the actuarial firm Milliman for this GASB 74 OPEB valuation that we need to be, that gets done as part of the annual audit process. So you add up all those, that's close to the 80,000. So again, that 75,000, that's subject to change.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions on finance? And again, those finance director services are in operating, not salaries, assuming you want to continue to utilize my services.
Not much
You
of a
wanna-
reply, sorry,
Yeah.
Andrew.
I take your silence as a positive affirmation. I appreciate that. Let's keep on going.
Big talk.
Put the heat on somebody else. Okay.
Next is fire EMS. Any questions on that?
This is always a big one, and in my mindset, I've always been supportive of fire and EMS. It's just that when you see the expense of, 42% of the, I don't know, one of the budgets back here, but then that expense doesn't show the offset of what our revenues are on that. We've got a 2026 budget, which is well below the 2025 budget, nearly $2 million.
Well,
Oh, okay, the revenues are over here.
Yeah, we budgeted the
So-
first, on the bottom of page 36 in the packet is looking at fiscal '25 is the entire revenue for the new fire station up in North Reddington Beach. And then the fiscal 26 is essentially the remaining amount to pay out. So we're simply the pass-through from the
Right.
county for the cost to build the station. The total cost not to exceed of 7.4 million. But again, it's going to go from the current fiscal year to next fiscal year. So that's why you see the revenue of 4.44 million and then the expense of 4.44 million.
But you take the capital piece out of there. I'm more interested in the operating, the annual.
Okay.
You know, what's it cost us to keep the trucks going and support the staff and then, you know, we service other communities that
We
provide revenue
So we will certainly break that out for you.
to
but-
offset it
Yeah.
somewhat.
So if we do take out the capital and the other current charges, that's almost 5 million just between the two capital improvements of, what am I looking? I'm sorry, there's three capital improvements of 75,000 and then 250,000. So that's about 4.8 million subtracted from the 9 million, again, gives us about 4.4 million. We can certainly show that for the next one a little more clearly. So to show, as you stated, Vice Mayor, the increase in operations. The majority of the increase are for personnel costs. So the salaries and wages related to we're going into the second year of the 3-year collective bargaining agreement. There are, which the commission previously approved, those wage increases from year to year, the step increases, et cetera. So that's the majority of the increases. Were also equipment that needs to be replaced, really to keep our firemen and women, obviously, is in the best possible condition, best, well-equipped, safe, and being able to respond every day to every call. This is, again, the largest expenditure in the city. We believe it's extremely, extremely worth it for what.
Oh, there's
what
no
we
doubt.
pay.
I just try to, you know, if I were to have a conversation on the street, you know, well, what does it cost us to maintain our fire and EMS so that they can respond to, as needed, you know, for the, you know, what's it cost the city? You know, I wouldn't quote any of these numbers. I would more think of the operational piece of it, you know, after we've have our vehicles and we have our manpower and everything associated with that, but then we cover the other cities and they contribute. So when you put that all together, what's it really cost the city of Madeira Beach to have such a,
So on that as well, when you see the salaries and wages aspect jump up almost $400,000, again, that's for the staffing of the
Right.
Reddington
right,
station.
just
well,
going to-
that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
and then we.
So you have to
Thanks, Chief.
pull that out of there if
Yeah.
you're going to have a
Right.
conversation with, you know, walking down the street and
Yeah,
you're talking to
absolutely.
your neighbors, well, what's that really cost? It's a great benefit.
Sure.
And everyone agrees it, but
Yeah,
for that, and it's.
Again, the Reddington EMS budget that was approved from Pinellas County EMS is $749,000.
Right, I
versus the
mean, yeah.
So it's ebbs and flows, and removing all of that, the number would be much, much smaller because we do have the Reddington fire contracts. That's 320,000 roughly. And then we have more funding from Pinellas County EMS for Madeira Beach itself.
Right.
So we have Madeira Beach and the Reddington EMS funding.
So it'd be a hard one, I mean, you live it, and it'd be a hard one for you to just come up.
There-
with a-
yeah, there-
You know,
there's-
with an elevator pitch of, you know, this is what it costs us.
Yeah, there's many aspects to it when there's so many entities involved. You know, we have 3 other cities, a county municipality, 2 fire stations. There's definitely many aspects to it.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just what runs through my mind, that's all. But it is what it is. I mean, it's great to see that the 2026 budget is less than the 2025 budget, and we're increasing our staff. That's wonderful.
Anything else in fire EMS? If not, then next would be human resources. Any questions on human resources? Hearing none. Any questions on information technology? Hearing none. Any questions on Johns Pass Village?
So, no, sorry.
Any questions on law enforcement?
Just to add, as we were in this meeting, I did receive the proposed agreement from the county that I will bring to you at the next, I think it's safe for the next workshop in July. I don't think we, and have the captain give a presentation. Really, the majority, as you can see from the expense, it is overall a little over a 7% increase, mainly related to just salaries and some increase in equipment costs. They are recommending, I don't have an objection to it, but it is the recommendation to go from 3 school crossing guards to 2 school crossing guards. But that's a very small percentage of it, and the captain will provide an explanation and the reason for that recommendation at the next workshop.
And then, any question on legal services?
I had a good one, but since we're not looking at projected, there's no reason to ask it.
It's a bargain.
I know. Well,
right?
when I looked at the projected, I'm like, why is it projected
Thanks,
to be
Tom.
so low? Does that mean that we're not getting all these lawsuits?
Nice discount from Trust Daniel LLP. No, we'll make sure we pay the invoices.
Then any question on non-departmental? So that one's going to include a lot of revenues, because if our revenues aren't necessarily department-specific, like fire inspection fees or recreation type, after, summer programs, et cetera.
I do. I have a couple questions. One is on the seafood festival, revenue in, revenue out. Where does that get captured in the budget? Is it in non-departmental? Is it in recreation? Where exactly does that go? And here's why I'm asking so last year, I requested, after listening to a lot of the talk about the seafood festival, I requested I wanted the revenue in, revenue out. And the recreation keeps Excel spreadsheets on revenue in, revenue out. And so I had 22, 23, 24, and then I got 25 this year. And when I received 25, Robin said that it didn't have overtime in it yet. And after I sat and thought about the numbers that I was looking at and comparing the 4 years, because I'm looking at it thinking, if we don't make any money, and if it's such a hassle for the city to do it, why do we do it? Why don't we sell it out, let somebody else pay us a flat fee to run the festival? We'd be a sponsor. And so I'm trying to reconcile those numbers and see, does it justify all of the effort that staff puts in? And I went to Andrew and asked Andrew to pull me the report out of a Clarion, and they don't match. The spreadsheet that for the last 2 years, because prior to 2024, it wasn't in a Clarion, it doesn't match what the spreadsheet is that I have. And in the conversation that I had with Andrew, I had a conversation with Robin and then with Andrew, I would, wherever this money gets captured, the revenue in, the revenue out, I believe that we should be able to have a report pulled out of a Clarion that shows us exactly where the money went and how it was spent. And the reason I think that that is important is because if you take something back, like you bought too much soda or you bought too much alcohol and it's not been opened, and you return that stuff, which is what I think you should be doing because it shouldn't be captured into this event, then a Clarion would show that because it would get keyed right back to that event. And what I ended up with for this year was a actual cost of $190,354.36 on the Excel spreadsheet, but the actual out of the Clarion is $144,512.47. So I'd like to see that held accountable and have real numbers, because I think that it should be able to, everything should be coded correctly so that we get real numbers and understand real dollars.
I would say currently it's in the we are recording it as a special event because we do have specific programs or projects for a variety of items, including of special events, but as
So
I
here's
stated,
my,
we'll
here's my
code it.
thing, so you understand what I'm saying. If this report was pulled with the GL code for the Johns Pass Seafood Festival, if there is $60,000 worth of money languishing out there, where is it currently where's it currently at in our actuals? Because it's not under this GL code.
I'm going to infer that it's in the recreation department. Or it could be, if it's overtime, it would be in the department, whether it was fire that we paid overtime or
Well-
whatever other department. But as I stated, we will make sure that it's corrected and coded properly as the special event. Seafood Festival event.
So there also wasn't any revenue for the event in a Clarion. It's not captured in a Clarion to the Seafood Festival for revenue.
Where do we,
Well, so that, the way. the-
I'm asking because I want to be
Right.
educated.
Right, and it's a challenge that's faced. So you talk on the expense side of things. We have multiple people paying bills, multiple people using a Clarion. So whether it's overlooked when it's coded, like the spreadsheet that I sent you, everything was highlighted in green. Everything that was highlighted in green, I physically went and found the invoice myself and made sure that that expense was there. I didn't, at the time, double check to see if it had been coded properly. And then previous years, I know you said you couldn't find certain things. I don't think we started coding
No, that's what I
things
said.
specific to those until this year. So on the revenue side of things, everything's just been coded to special events. Because when depending on the software that we use, so like the Eventney software, if we get a payment from them, it could be a seafood festival payment, or it could be a payment for another vendor fee that we have. So we would actually have to sit down and manually break those out, just the way that the software is built.
I think you
So-
should.
Right, but
Yeah,
on the other side of things,
That's-
the finance staff receives a check from the company and says, hey, we got a check for $4,200 in revenue. It's for special events. What's it for? So then it's been coded special events. That's just how it's been until this time. But
who will get it
It's-
correct and make sure
right.
that we're properly coding?
So
And that
can I-
would be citywide.
So I'd like to ask one other question. On this year's spreadsheet that I got out of a Clarion, we paid a non-employee person to work in the city's tent. Why did we do that when we had people who were willing to volunteer?
at the time, we needed help. We had somebody that was willing to help, so we paid them. I don't think this is the time for this conversation.
Well, it
You
is
and I-
because we're talking about dollars.
I understand
That's
that.
the whole purpose of
Yeah,
the.
but we're,
I
I
don't
mean,
want to get
I
into
would
the.
just like this to be able to be printed out of the system and be accurate, where any commissioner or any resident that lives in the city would be able to see what we spent and what we made, because I'm talking about making a decision of whether or not the city should run the event.
yeah.
If we,
No, and I
if
think
we
the city
run it
should
for-
run the event going forward. There's a
Did he
lot
not?
of reasons why the city should run the event and not a private entity, but we can have a workshop just to discuss and
Which would
debate
be
that, but it
lovely.
is very important that the city run the event versus someone else. But just to give you my thoughts on it. and we
Robin,
can-
I think
yeah.
if the event loses money, the city should run it. But I'd like to see what this city's really done year over year to be able to have that discussion.
And everything is listed somewhere, it's just not where it should be currently. But it is recorded, and as I stated, if we delve into it, it'll be likely in the recreation department.
I don't doubt that. I'm not doubting that it's not out there. I'm just saying that when you're looking at information for budgeting, you want to understand what it is, and you want the numbers to be the numbers, whether it's an event or, like we
Absolutely.
discussed earlier, the projected for the year, all of those things. That's what a budget is for.
And we will make sure, we have hired outside individuals for certain events. I just don't, in the time that I've been here, so we will review that, and where we can use volunteers, we will use volunteers, but we have in the time that I've been here. Only a few times, but I can recall 3 or 4 times where we did hire an outside individual or individuals.
Is there training required? Is there additional training? If the input is not being inputted properly, or if there's, I'll call it an Excel spreadsheet, if there's cells that are not being completed when putting in expenses.
Oh, I think it's simply going into the financial software, into a Clarion, and properly coding all expenditures.
Well,
But
that's what I'm
yeah.
asking about.
I don't think it's a training, it's simply just putting it in the correct place. I think it's just left
It's all
in
on
a generic,
It's all on an input, though.
Yeah.
So if someone input it, and if they're not inputting it, if they're putting it into, or inputting it into a general account versus a specific, in this question.
in this
You know,
case,
I've never
yeah.
used a Clarion, so I don't know.
no, but what I'm saying is this is a specific, like a subset of a revenue or an expense. So if we have Seafood Festival as an event, that's a subset in our general ledger of another account.
Exactly, so if that cell in, I'm going to use Excel because I don't never use, but it's all based on Excel anyway, in my opinion. If they could select recreation, or they could select an actual event that recreation held, well, maybe recreation shouldn't be used. That's a general account. You want it specified to 4th of July, or you want it to the Seafood Festival, or whatever that specific event was.
Yeah, my quick 2 cents is in the Clarion system, when you hit the GL code special event fees, which is, here you see in the budget 001.1400.3 something, we can have an internal policy to say, whenever you do that, if you ever hit this GL account, you must select the correct program or activity. Because when you hit that, the system then dynamically appears this program drop-down that might have 7 different options, and then you have
Right,
to hit one.
exactly. So
The system doesn't require it, but we can have an internal policy to say, look, if you
can the
hit this
system
code,
require it?
then you need to select the applicable program or activity that's associated with it. Then we can capture that revenue.
I mean, I think it benefits the recreation department.
Well, it
Right.
benefits,
I mean, it benefits us all, but it benefits them greatly to see.
yeah, we're
Where
doing
they're
great
at,
here, we're
yeah.
not doing so well
Right,
here.
correct.
You can't improve anything unless you have the data.
Well, and
Right,
that's,
and we do.
so prior to us taking on the Seafood Festival 5 years ago, it wasn't something that we budgeted for, so it was, everything that we did special event-wise was in the special event line item.
Right.
So when we took on the event, that's why it's in this, so it's been the policy of staff until now to take in the revenue into special events. It's not a lack of like, oh, we're just not doing it to not do it, it's
No,
just the
it's-
policies
of-
to bring it in.
of
So-
course.
And that's why I personally have kept the spreadsheet for that event. I've got the 5K that we're doing this week, I have a spreadsheet for that, because I can't, in the manner that you're looking for in a Clarion, I can't account for with the project code yet.
Well, that
I mean,
sounds
we
like-
have the ability to do it, we just,
will,
it's been
Sounds
slowly
like
rolling in,
a
and that's what we're
Clarion
trying to
needs to
do.
be
So,
updated. Or
right, that's, it's
managed.
there, yeah.
Well, and the Seafood Festival is the largest event. I mean, it's
Yes.
big, it's
We
a
have
lot of
events
money,
almost
it's a lot
weekly.
it's a lot to keep up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have other events that the Great American Grunt Hunt, similar, as Jay said, the we have two 5Ks, the one this weekend, the one that we held in April for the fire, and other events, and we'll make sure that everything is set up as its own program or project so that all the revenue and all the expense are tracked.
Right, when you set up an event, it
We'll
should have a
set up
drop-down.
yep.
Should be easy.
Robin, we're going to budget Christmas decorations for $52,000 next year. What is going to be the difference between the $35,000 we budgeted this year and going all the way up to $52,000 next year?
Well, I think the 52,000 is what we paid or 50,000 approximately in prior years. This year, we did not energize, we did not have the same number of items. We did not put, the contractor did put up not the same number as in prior years, but we'll find out what
We budgeted for $35,000 this year. We're budgeting for $52,000 next year.
because that's the quote that we received from the contractor.
We did just shy of $33,000 in 2024.
Yeah, we'll get back with the contractor. That's what the price that they gave us.
So for fireworks, we budgeted $35,000 this year, and we're going to $55,000 next year. So what is the $20,000 more going to get us?
We have one additional event? I don't think so.
Tariffs. The contract for
Potential
fireworks
tariffs.
is up this year, so it has to go back out for bid. So we have to have a discussion about July 3rd versus July 4th, if we want to get into that. I really don't want to, but that would be Independence Day and the three other events that we've done fireworks. We would likely keep the other three events at 5,000. You guys have seen how those look off the pier. That's pretty good money well spent. This is also the 150th? No. What's the anniversary next year?
250th.
I was close. So yeah, we were hoping to go a little bit larger if that's in y'all's interest.
So when do you think you're going to do the bid for it?
We typically do it right after 4th of July.
4th of July?
See if they perform well and then.
And if we could, that means that you'll get that pricing back prior to us approving the budget. So if we need to be higher or wherever we need to be based off what day, then,
And I've had some preliminary discussions with the existing vendor, just what type of cost increase are there? Not like, hey, what would the cost increase look like if we were to do the same stuff? And that's the healthy number, so.
okay.
It's the semi-quincentennial anniversary of the United States.
There you go.
Try saying that fast a few times. Also for Christmas decorations, we were looking, as I looked through the contractor provided to us, we were looking to add 2 more trees, and that's the majority of the increase along with some additional decorations.
Where
If-
at?
We were looking to add a tree, I think I forget where we were going to add the tree, but I think here in front of City Hall, but and at the marina, but we will come back with you with the specifics.
Anything else for non-departmental? If not, then anything for parks? Hearing nothing for parks, anything for public works admin? If nothing for public works admin, anything for recreation?
I noticed that on the sponsorships, that this year we budgeted $30,000 and next year you're going down to 10. Is that because of the,
Most of that, sponsorships is mostly in special events.
Right.
So it's still there, it's just going into the
Oh,
different.
you're just moving it somewhere else?
Yeah. We do the field banners. The field banners typically go, so this year we didn't, as a recovery from the storm, we did free sponsorships for everybody just to get advertisement businesses up as a goodwill to the community. But in the coming years, we sell those, and then that goes into that sponsorship one, as well as ancillary benefits for Grunt Hunt and a few other events. And then special sponsorships for any other special events, whether it's Burger Week or anything else. Seafood Fest goes into the special events category.
And then the youth leagues
Yes.
are going from 40,000 to 5,000 on your budget. The budget has, this year you budgeted 40,000, and for 2026 is budgeted at 5. Is that just an error?
That should be an error. Well, it shouldn't be an error, but that probably is.
Because-
It should be comparable to previous years. This year's tough with the middle school field. We've found
Oh.
ways to make it work out here,
Yep.
but we will be hopefully shifting back to that field once
They are moving those trailers out.
it's going to take time.
Then the field's going to be a mess.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Did y'all have any questions?
Youth league should be what, Jay? I can make that change now. Change it to 40? Okay, anything else for recreation? If not, Archibald Park? Anything for that? If nothing for Archibald Park, then building fund, anything for the building fund? And then if nothing for building fund, debt service, I don't think that's pretty straightforward. Those are just our principal and interest payments on our general governmental activities debt, the Series 2013 debt, and then anything on gas tax fund, that's a small one. If not, then anything on impact fee fund. And if nothing on impact fee fund, anything on the local option sales tax fund, which will go into, it could go into more detail on the capital improvement plan. So then if nothing there, anything on the marina fund. And then if nothing on the marina fund, anything on the parking fund. Nothing on parking fund, anything on sanitation. And then if nothing on sanitation, anything on stormwater. With focus on operations, because in capital, we can walk through that in our capital section.
So I don't have anything on stormwater, but because this is the end of this portion, I did want to say that I enjoyed reading everyone's accomplishments for 2025 and their goals and objectives for 2026. I thought that every department had some very good goals and objectives, so it was nice to read and see. I felt like they were very well thought out.
Appreciate that feedback. And then anything on capital outlays. So we start with the historical analysis, just showing kind of what spend has been. We always budget, we have historically in the city budgeted much more aggressively than what we've actually spent. So this is, want to give you that depiction of what true capital expenditures have been over the last 10 years. And then here's what our capital improvement plan is just for fiscal year 2026.
So I would like to see, and Robin and I had a conversation about this, the restroom facility at the school athletic fields removed for a multitude of reasons. One of them is I don't believe that can be done for $100,000. And the second is we haven't even talked to the school and gotten an approval from them for it. And if we're going to lay that money somewhere, we should be budgeting it someplace that we're actually going to use it. And then I was curious if there was any update on the jetty sidewalk to know whether or not the $250,000 might be enough, or if we're just still.
The jetty sidewalk, I do not have any updates on that. I'm still waiting on some information from, I believe it's FDEP for the design, and then we'll go through permitting. So there is not, but I didn't want to not have anything in
Yes,
the
no,
budget
I
in
agree.
the event we were able to start construction.
Yeah.
Because I think once we do have the plans and the permits, I think it will go pretty
Pretty
quick.
quick. Okay, thank you.
The restroom at the school, that's it, you can take it. My conversations with them, they're gonna leave the connection in the ground accessible, but as far as like the timeframe, I've asked them the timeframe of the school, and every time I ask them, they just tell me the next step. I don't think they know, like, their focus right now is pulling off the portables, and then he says, well, then we gotta scrape it, and we don't know how we're gonna do that. And then they don't know what they're gonna do as far as, so I don't think,
Is the sprinkler system still there? Is it going to be intact when they're done?
there's sprinkler system, the lighting, the fencing, it's all,
I mean, we paid for the sprinkler system originally, didn't
and the
we?
lighting back in
Yeah.
the 90s.
Yeah,
So there's, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll review it and probably, as you stated, just move this to a future year if we proceed
I
with
wouldn't
it.
move it to a future year. I would remove it. I mean, that's just my opinion. The whole notion of us building a bathroom on a piece of property that we don't own, I don't understand why we would do that. I understand that we utilize that field for soccer, but why would we spend, and $100,000 won't do it, because I know that from having conversation with the city staff about adding a restroom at a different location, which $100,000 wouldn't do it. So, I mean, before we budget for something like that, I think there's got to be a lot more conversation, because, like I said, why would we build a bathroom on a piece of property we don't own? And why would we even start trying to budget for something when, if the commission said, yes, we want to do that, then the conversation, there should be some buy-in already that the school would be willing to do it. To me, it doesn't make any sense.
I would agree.
Sounds good, so we'll remove that. And then any other questions or comments on capital improvement plan specific to FY '26? If none, then the second piece to that is just the multi-year. And we've gone through this in previous workshops, but just wanted to present this again. So if there's any questions, concerns, comments, let us know.
I can tell you that I will save it for the next meeting, but I do want to have a discussion about a purchase, and I'm going to ask to add it to the agenda, about a purchase that the city made this year on our budget for discussion, and it is the recreation truck that was purchased I want to have a in the sunshine discussion on that truck and its usage. I don't think this meeting is the appropriate place,
We'll
but
have it at the next workshop, the July workshop.
I want to have it today at the next
Oh, at the-
workshop. I'm
at the
going to
workshop
add
at
it
6
at the
o'clock?
workshop,
Okay.
yes. I'm going to ask to add it.
And then the last item on the agenda is, I know we've had a personnel focused workshop and budget workshop 3. So one byproduct of that was to show a personnel listing of all the position titles and if they're filled or vacant, and then what the hours are, part-time, full-time, and allocation percentage. I had a one-on-one with the mayor who asked if I could present additional material, and I can include that to you all, just showing by department, and here's the department head, and then here are the departments that that department head is responsible for, and then here's that roster of positions, both filled and vacant, under that department head. So I can provide that deliverable to you all subsequent to this meeting.
While we're talking about capital improvements, is the fire station on here? Am I just overlooking it?
It is the one that we're currently building.
No, this one right here. I know we received funds to do the repairs, but I believe there was some discussion on some improvements, not the repairs. Has that not made it into,
It is, it's in the FD aspect of the budget part of it. You'll see the $250,000 in
where,
there.
what page?
70.
I believe where,
Oh, no, sorry, that's not it.
On
Page
page
70.
70 in the local option sales tax fund, construction, addition of office space, meeting room, and storage at the
Okay.
fire.
Fire department.
Okay. All right, very good, thank you.
yes, sir.
On personnel, Robin, I think you might can answer this. Do you know how many employees in the city, if any, work from home? And do we have any employees who are working 4 10-hour days currently?
If we have just a couple in the building, in community development, no employees, whether they work full-time, we have employees that occasionally work from home or asked to work from home, but I'll find out if we have any others that
I'd
are.
like to know those 2 questions, please, at the next meeting.
If no other questions or comments, that concludes my presentation. Thanks for your time and attention.
Any
Do we have any
questions?
public comment? Any comments, commissioners? It is 5:47. We are adjourned.